Welcome to the Brand Fortress HQ podcast. I'm your host, John Stojan, and today for another Tactics Tuesday, I have our co-founder, Mike Kaufman, and our other co-founder, Matt Atkins here. And today we're going to be talking about user-generated content. So that's one of those buzzwords that we've been hearing a lot about, especially as we talk about how you build and fortify your brand. Having user-generated content and how people are actually using your product in the real world is becoming more and more important. And there's a lot of different ways to get that content. And so today we really want to drill down on how you can get user-generated content. So first thing I'm going to do is, Matt, I'm actually going to hand it over to you to talk about, some different ways that you've used in order to get user-generated content for your brands and brands you've worked with.
Yeah, so when we launched our barbecue accessories brand, we had an audience that we leveraged. Mike's done the hard work of creating an audience. I was able to piggyback on with an existing audience, and a lot of the same things that Mike talked about. We used our audience for product research, like what are we going to sell first, and different than Mike. Our products in the barbecue space are for the most part Me Too. We do have a couple of innovative designs on some things that are a little bit higher end than what the masses sell on Amazon. But for the most part, our top sellers are all Me Too products, and there's 20 other sellers selling the exact same thing, and there's Chinese sellers selling the exact same thing for $10 less than we're selling it for. So one of the benefits, we've talked about so many of the benefits of having an audience, and this one, in relation to user generated content, it really wasn't anything that we asked for or anything that I expected. When we launched, we had a couple of hundred people that were ready to buy it at full price. We didn't have to give a discount. We didn't have to do any giveaways. Back when we launched this brand, giveaways were the primary way of ranking a product when you launched. We didn't have to do any of that. And we had a bunch of people lined up in the worst part of the year to launch a barbecue brand in January, right after Christmas. And, after the first review started rolling in, it was fascinating to me how many of our audience, clearly they were in our audience because they mentioned our Facebook group and mentioned some of the things that happen in there. But they were leaving reviews with videos and reviews with pictures, and then they would start to post in the group anytime any of them got the new box, and they would do an unboxing video. And again, we weren't incentivizing that in any way. It just happened naturally. And right off the bat, I started using that in some of our creative. And, this is back before TikTok was even around. UGC, the acronym probably existed, but it wasn't something that people were talking about really or using in your marketing. But we started to include it because, we were actually at the time looking for some new images for our listing. And right out of the gate, they started converting better because, these are exactly our target audience that were taking pictures. And it wasn't just a content creator. Like, these were actual customers that we launched this product for, using our product in the exact way that we want to show other people in the marketing using it. So yeah, we were getting user-generated content without asking for it right out of the gate, and that has really become a big part of who we are as a brand, how we portray our brand on Amazon.
Yeah, and I want to double click on something there, which is when you say not getting that or that you didn't have to ask for it. I think that's such an advantage, whether it's because you've built a big email list like you have, Mike, or like what you did, Matt, which is partnering with somebody who's built that audience that is, really passionate about that particular category, that, you don't have to beat the drum really hard in order to get really good content. People are happy to do it for free just to kind of show off the cool product that you made. So, having that right to begin with is such an advantage. As you go on with the brands, are there are you still primarily just relying on essentially ad hoc or goodwill of people to get user-generated content, or have you put any systems in place in order to get that user-generated content?
Because we realized how better it made our listing look, and how better it converts than like high production value type videos, we definitely started asking for it. And we actually put it in an insert card. So right now, the insert card that we're split testing, and most of our products in that brand are share a picture of yourself on social media and enter into a contest. So we certainly incentivize it now. It's something that, but again, people know, like, the more people that come into our community, whether it be from joining the Facebook group or they purchase our product. Also, that's another thing that we include in our listing, is that there is a community. We don't say Facebook. I don't want Amazon to think that I'm driving traffic off of the platform, but it's obvious that there's some sort of a community somewhere. And that's actually where we want people sharing their stuff, because what we noticed is every time we did a promotion in the group where we would send people to the listing, those people came back and did like unboxing videos in the group, which then got more people to see the, they didn't always see the post that we made in the group about the contest, but those ones that people were posting about unboxing their new product, those always tended to get a lot more engagement. So we have certainly incentivized it, but because we're at the forefront of the group showing people that, it gets other people to do the same thing anyways.
Well, and that's the interesting thing about social, right? Is like, I think that's the thing that oftentimes is forgotten, is that the whole point of social is interaction. Like, that's why people are there, right? Like, they want to be noticed, they want to see other people, they want to interact, like, that's the whole purpose. So it's like, if you are, so like, we have an email list, but we haven't until very recently really started putting much effort into building out a social presence and start building up a follower list on social. And so it's like, yes, we can request that sort of thing through email, and we're actually running a campaign here shortly to do so, but we're waiting for the season to ramp up so people have their pools open. But the thing about that is that email is a very different animal, right? Like, we can contact them and we can ask, and I'm sure many will respond. But in social, it's just a more natural thing, right? Like, I mean, if you want to be seen, then you have to do something for people to see, which means you got to take a picture, or you got to take a video or something. And if you're in this community that's all about that, that's what you're going to take pictures and video of. And the other thing is that then it snowballs, because when you see somebody else do it, you want to be a part of the group. So of course you want to do the same thing. So it builds on itself in a way that email can't. So I think there's a value to both sides of that. You definitely want to have an email list because it's the only one that you control, right? Like, if you got a Facebook group, Facebook could shut you down anytime, right? So you definitely still want to have that email list. But I wouldn't say that building the email list is in and of itself sufficient. I think that having the combination of the email list and that social presence with those followers and group members and things like that is definitely the 1-2 punch that really takes it, I think, to the next level.
So Matt, you talked about it a little bit, but I really want to maybe dig a little bit deeper on, you talked about, okay, so we got this user-generated content, like, at least in the beginning, essentially because of how strong of groundwork you laid before really even launching the brand. And now you've got kind of a process. What are the different areas where you've used that user-generated content, and where you've seen it have an impact on Amazon?
So it's really all over our listing. Like I said, I mean, that really has become part of who our brand is. Our tagline at one point was barbecue products created by barbecue, or something along the lines of, we are barbecuers and we create products for barbecuers. So, I mean, it started out just in our listings, like at the secondary and third, like all of the lifestyle images that we were originally using stock images for, or, I was that kind of do-it-yourselfer bootstrap brand builder in the beginning. But I mean, so all over my images, every lifestyle image in the carousel were actual people using our product in the wild. That started to go kind of filter down into the A+ content. Now our A+ content is pretty much all of our lifestyle imagery on A+ content are images taken from our community. And that's really the biggest place where we kind of play up the community. I mean, our goal is to get people in the group, because in the group we control what we can say and we can have promotions in there, and it's already a big group anyway. So building that kind of community feel for our brand is something that happened naturally with this user-generated content. But also we created some videos, like, there were some videos that people would send them in, like as a review. Obviously you don't have that asset to use. We were trying to take what we found on Facebook is that it was really hard to download a video that someone posted in the group because it just wouldn't be very high res. So right now, actually, we're looking for ways to, how can we provide a place where people can upload videos as opposed to posting it on Facebook, so that we have that. But I mean, the videos that we have in our ads, the video on the carousel, like those were all just chopped up images for the most part of some of this user generated content that we were getting from our consumers. So all the way from our image carousel to our sponsored brand video ads, everything has a picture of some sort of a customer using our product.
Yeah, and I think that's, one of the big. So I mean, obviously, from a branding perspective, as brand becomes more important, and that's a theme you're going to hear over and over and over from us, because we just think it's so true as Amazon and really just e-commerce in general matures. But the other thing is that for people to take away all those different places where user-generated content, whether that be in video form or in picture form, can be used. Some of the obvious ones that you talked about are, your listing, not only your images, but also your listing videos. But as that, Amazon really opens up a lot more areas for branding. The other thing is, Amazon Posts is another fantastic place where you can use that user generated content and, brand stories and, a number of other places that Amazon is opening up in order to really tell that brand story. And if you have user generated content, it gives you a big advantage of showing your ideal customer actually using the product.
Well, and the other advantage too, realistically, is especially if you're a brand that maybe doesn't have a large marketing budget, right? Like if your margins are a little thinner, or you're running into some issues and you just don't have the marketing budget. Like if you think about it, the thing about UGC is, for the most part, it's free. Maybe you might incentivize that to some degree, but there's generally ways to incentivize that don't really have much actual monetary expense to the brand. And then that content can be used, like you said, it can be used anywhere, like on your listing, in your ads, on your social, like you can repurpose it so many different ways. And so, oftentimes if you want to do a really nice, production level video of your product, like a lifestyle kind of a thing, that's pretty pricey, especially for certain products. Like maybe it's easier for, say an item that gets used in the kitchen or something, right? But like we sell pool tools. So the only way that we're going to create a production level video is we're renting a really nice house with a pool. We need at least, one or two people who are going to be in the videos. Then we need the crew who's going to be taking the shots and doing it. Like our last video shoot was like 10 grand or more, so it's an expensive process to create a really good quality video. And realistically speaking, these days, unless you get it absolutely right, it's probably not going to perform as well as UGC is. And that doesn't cost you hardly anything.
So the other thing I'm curious about, because I mean, obviously the quality that you get from UGC varies widely. Is there certain kind of prompts or instructions that you provide, either via email or your inserts, or as customers go through that process, to help kind of nudge them in the right direction for the type of content that works well for your customers?
So there's been a couple of members in our group that have kind of risen to the top in terms of content creation for us. We have a lot of like competition pit masters in our group that travel the country in these competitions, and a lot of them, actually some of our products, the ones that I was talking about, where they're not necessarily Me Too. One of them was used in a much different application than we use it for in the barbecue space, but like those guys, first of all, they're easy to work with because they understand, like, these guys are like, they eat, sleep, and breathe barbecue. So they're very comfortable around a barbecue. Like, they come with a lot of ideas themselves for content or ways that they can show the product in use. But so those ones, the ones that kind of rose to the top in terms of they were creating a lot of content for us, and they were creating a lot of really good content. Some of them have, YouTube channels and things like that where they have like expensive camera equipment, so it just looks better. But yeah, so with those ones, I mean, for the most part, even if it's something that doesn't show it in the way that we want to show it, there's always places and there's always places that we can use those. But what we've got now is like, now we're starting to use actual content creators that are on these places like TikTok. And what I love about TikTok is, first of all, back 3 years ago when we launched that brand, influencer marketing, which is what it was called back then, it was a lot more cost prohibitive for smaller brands. Now there's a couple of things that have happened. First of all, TikTok is here, and that's a lot different, where, I mean, someone that doesn't have a huge following can go viral on TikTok. But then also there's not, I forgot where I was going with that. But yeah, so when it's creators, like, so Amazon PPC has become a lot more expensive now. So those other types of platforms to advertise on are now a lot more cost effective than they were before. So now we're looking at things like influencer marketing, but on TikTok, and they're in that brief where you're looking for them, you can actually lay out what it is that you want them to do with the product. So we're kind of playing around with that a little bit more now that we're engaging with influencers on those types of platforms. But with our audience, they pretty much know how we want to see it, and there's not really a whole lot of prompting we have to give them in order to see it in the way that we would want to advertise it.
Well, yeah. The thing too is that you can use, like when you post something to TikTok or something like that, I mean, you have the opportunity to use that as split testing, let's say, right? Like, I mean, what videos perform, you can start to see those themes, as you're using these videos for this purpose. You get to see the things that actually do go viral and how they go viral, so that then you can post those videos to your social and say, hey, people are really digging this, can you make some new variations of this type of a video? You'll likely get more views, whatever. There's all sorts of ways that you can, kind of promote that to your audience and point them in the right direction, let's say, of creating content that's going to perform well. I was also going to mention one other thing, and that is when you're repurposing the content, it's important to recognize that videos don't perform the same on one platform that they do on another one. Like, you never can really judge what video is going to go viral on what platform and to what degree. A video that gets, 50 views on one platform might get 30,000 views, on another platform. And so if you're not repurposing that content onto multiple platforms, you're probably losing out, because even though it looks like a dud on another platform, it might actually go well. So.
Yeah, well, and there's two things that come to my mind just that I want to double click on based on what you guys mentioned. I mean, the first one, Mike, is just to kind of build on what you were saying there. Not only do they perform differently on different platforms, but that's not to say that you can't, repost that video or rework it a little bit a month later, 3 months later, 6 months later, especially with how fast content is viewed on these platforms.
Right.
Nobody's going to probably notice. And especially if you, kind of remix or repurpose some of that content, even on the same platform, you might have the first time where it only gets, 2 impressions, and then the next time it gets 200,000, especially on TikTok, where the algorithm seems to be very, very random. The other thing, Matt, that I think that you brought up that I think is important for people to take away, or at least I want to double click on, which is, when you're finding those influencers, when you find somebody, I feel like are in a really good situation where you've got those people that kind of know what they're doing, essentially. And not every brand or every category is going to have, that luxury. So the other thing is once you find a handful of influencers that do a good job, like, you can have them on a regular basis making content for you, because it does take quite a bit of work in order to go find, an influencer, whether it be on TikTok or Instagram or somewhere else, that produces good videos, produces them on time, and is going to have an impact for your brand.
Yeah, I think having a black book, so to speak, of influencers, and like I said, a lot of ours came, and how we started that process of earmarking the ones that we knew were creating good content for us was, it started because the ones that were in our group. like I said, some of the ones rose to the top right off the bat because we knew like a couple of the guys had YouTube channels or they were featured on YouTube channels. So they already had the really, really good cameras that in a lot of cases, it's not necessary, but like the ones that they were creating for us, the content that they were creating was like taking grill grates off with fire in the background and using some heat resistant gloves. Like those were the types of videos we were able to use for them. And we incentivized them. Like those, those guys got product. They got, anytime we had new merch, we'd send it to them and we treated them as we would an influencer, but they were kind of naturally just part of our audience.
Yeah, and I think the other thing, because we've helped a few brands with this, that I would say is that TikTok Marketplace for influencers has been incredibly helpful, where they actually have a really good platform where you can post, kind of, hey, here's what I'm looking for, here's what I'm willing to pay, and then you have influencers who will actually apply for it. So, rather than the challenges, at least we've had in the past with platforms like Instagram, is that it's a lot of work to find an influencer that you think is going to be a good fit for you, and then you reach out to them, and the response rate, quite frankly, is pretty low. Whereas with TikTok, especially with their marketplace, you can set up what is essentially a brief, and then influencers come to you. And obviously, how much you pay per post does have a big influence on what quality you're going to get. But we found that a lot more effective than, trying to use some tool and reach out to people on Instagram. And quite frankly, a lot of the influencers that we were able to find on TikTok also had Instagram accounts and Instagram following. So we kind of got a 2-for-1 in that process.
Yeah. It only makes sense that they would, right? I mean, going back to that whole thing about, repurposing content, like you're already creating the content. It doesn't take that much more to post that same content on other platforms and see what you can get out of it. So most of them that have any kind of a following on one platform probably have at least some following somewhere else too.
Yeah, there was also another place that we found. I actually clicked on an ad on Facebook, and it was talking about that when Amazon Influencer Program first came out, and there were these groups that were teaching people how to be content creators and how to use that platform as a money making, as a way to generate revenue. And we actually landed on a couple of really cool influencers in that group that weren't a part of our Facebook group. They were just wanting to learn how to create content. And by being a part of that group, I actually purchased like a $99 program or something like that. But it put me in this group of people that were brand new to the idea of creating content, but they were interested in it. And man, I got, I think ended up getting 10 to 12 videos for free, just sending them free content. One of the things that what we looked for on Instagram were, for a long time, we got the best response rates from kind of that micro influencer, like right around or just under 10,000 followers, where their response rate was a whole lot higher. And in most cases, they were happy just working for free product. And that's what we were finding in these Facebook groups of these programs teaching people how to be content creators on Amazon affiliate. So that was a little bit of a gold mine of finding these content creators that really fit our brand.
Well,
Yeah.
and UGC, serves two purposes, right? I mean, one of those purposes is for them to post it to their, followers and whatnot that they're going to get engagement with. But the other part is that you own the content. Like then you can repurpose it other places. So when you work with those micro influencers who are willing to do it for just free product, you get a lot more bang for your buck because number one, like you said, a lot of times they get better engagement, but also you still get the content. Whereas if you work with a large influencer, yes, you have more eyeballs, and yes, you might get decent engagement and you get the content, right? But you pay a lot more for it. So like that piece of it, the fact that you get the UGC to use up somewhere else doesn't cost you any more from a micro influencer than it does from, somebody who's got 3 million followers.
Yeah. Well, in our experience, we kind of found there are a couple of things to share around that. First of all, if you're doing this process, the Goldilocks place for us was offering not only a free product for we were looking for like unboxing and reviews and that type of stuff, but also some sort of, cash incentive to go with that. It didn't have to be huge, even if it was, $50. for a micro influencer, we saw a lot better, higher quality videos, better response, and all that type of stuff than if we were just sending a product. So I wouldn't be afraid to put a little bit of cash behind it. With that said, you're 100% correct of, I wouldn't go after, an influencer that's got, 100,000 followers or 1 million followers, because yeah, that's a big number, but the likelihood that those followers are going to see your video and are your, target market, they're going to be interested in your product and your brand, are fairly low. And that's, I think that's pretty much the, accepted best practice at this point.
You could probably also, and maybe this is the way you ran it, I don't know, John, but you could run that in kind of like a two-step, right? Like, hey, you get free product if you create some UGC, but if you take it to this next level, and we get, these certain shots, or you do this with the product, or you take it, this length of video, or whatever, like you create some criteria that if they meet those criteria, then they get the, additional, $50 or whatever. I think it's going to be different in every market, just exactly how effective that is and what strategy you're going to use. But, knowing that you can put a little bit of money behind it and maybe you can get better quality content, and then just deciding whether you want to put that behind a wall or not, like, okay, you need to meet these criteria to get that extra, juice or not. But
Yeah. Well, the other thing that I would say, especially for brands that are just like, okay, what's an effective but easy way to get started with this? And we've actually tied this into our launch process for new products, is actually using a service called Join Brands. And we've really enjoyed the work that we've done with them, because one, they have an option where you can actually choose, hey, I want a video from someone who is an Amazon influencer. So, that video, or obviously they've got other social channels. That's how you get the Amazon influencer account. But the nice thing about that is that video gets posted, to their Amazon influencer account, which means it shows up on your listing. In addition to that, they do a lot of the legwork for, basically they have a whole pool of influencers and you kind of invite them and that type of stuff. So it just makes that process a lot easier. And you can provide direction, and you get the videos at the end, like you said, in order to use pretty much anywhere you want. So we've actually started incorporating that into our launch process, where we'll run 10 of those in the first couple of weeks. And it's great because they're buying the product. So we get, some sales from it. We obviously, because it's of Amazon's terms of service, we don't ask for a review. But there are, I would say, probably a third to a half of them that do end up leaving a review because they bought the product,
right.
which can be, very beneficial as well. So at least as far as kind of where to get started on this process, we've found Join Brands being, really helpful from that aspect.
Yeah. Something I was thinking about too is that I think we're entering into a space right now where, AI is creating a lot of new opportunities in order to make use, let's say, of content that you already have. So, in other words, I think we're about to see a large increase in tools that will make it possible to take UGC videos and regenerate them, with a new person, or in a different environment, or whatever, so that you would potentially have the opportunity to take one piece of UGC and not just repurpose the same piece of content, but to be able to repurpose variations of that content if you wanted to. I feel like we're getting really close to that stage now. There's also the potential that maybe we're getting close to the stage where you can start creating them out of thin air. Who knows? But at a minimum, I think we're certainly moving into the space where you can take actual content that you have and start repurposing it and regenerating it in ways that allow you to use it in more places and, just more instances of it.
Well, I mean, before we started using the user generated content that we were getting from our audience, to be honest, and almost embarrassingly, like I would go a lot longer than I should have between photo shoots to split test new images and new A+ content and things like that. But now, we've got a Google Drive folder filled with hundreds of these photos that we repurposed in lots of different ways. And, like that's, for me, it's made us a lot more agile in terms of stuff that we want to create. Like, I mean, really, honestly, like if I want to do something Christmas themed, I can use some of these AI tools that you're talking about right now and upload some of the UGC that we already have in a Google Drive folder and put a Santa uniform or costume on one of the guys standing in front of a grill. Like, so, for me, that has made me a lot more agile, because before, like I said, I was piecemealing things together. I had a photographer, I had a graphic designer, they never talked. So like I had to worry about getting the point across to both of them at the same time. But now I just take UGC content, throw it in the AI tool. I can put it in a different background, like you said, put a hat on them. And I mean, that's a new image that I can upload in an hour as opposed to weeks.
Right. Well, and you're also getting to the point where you could do that en masse. Like, I mean, you could put one image into an AI. Like, I'm pretty sure you could probably do this with Midjourney. I know that you can do Midjourney. Like, if you set the right prompt, you can make it do, like, it'll do like 10 repeats, like, and each time Midjourney generates images, it generates 4 images. You can have it do it 10 times with the same prompt with a certain, modification, and get 40 images out of it. Well, you can feed an image into Midjourney and say, hey, modify this, or whatever. So we're definitely getting to the point where you could do that en masse. You could do 40 regenerations of that image, in a heartbeat. Maybe only 10 of them are good, but you instantly have 10 new images that you can use any way you want.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think the thing that surprises me most about this, I mean, obviously UGC is is important in a sense of being able to build your brand and getting that content. I mean, Amazon has definitely, tipped their hat to this with, I think it's Amazon Connect that they now have for generating UGC right on the platform. Is that what it's called?
Creator Connect, maybe?
Yeah, Creator Connect. That's what it is. Although I will say, the couple of experiences that I've had with that have definitely left a lot to be desired. So that's the other thing.
We've had one good experience with Creator Connect. We ended up with a good creator that we're working with right now, and that's been useful. We had a large number of other connections that didn't go anywhere and didn't materialize into anything positive, let's say. So.
Well, and that's what boggled my mind. So, I mean, it makes it. I think how the framework for it makes a lot of sense as far as, providing more incentive for that creator, while at the same time, a discount to customers, which makes a lot of sense. And then you get more sales out of it. So like the blocking and tackling makes sense. It's just, for whatever reason, when you start actually looking at the execution of it, a lot of the creators, at least so far in my experience, and I think, this will probably be another one of those things that gets better over time, but the creator quality of people that raise their hand from that, even when the incentives are fairly good, has been incredibly low.
Yeah, I don't know. I think, maybe they just feel like they have better opportunities elsewhere, so the lower hanging fruit in that category is, some of the creators that aren't doing well other places. And so that's where they are. I don't know. I'm not sure I can explain it, but it definitely hasn't been as useful as other options have been.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think, as we wrap up this episode, Matt, for folks that are, know that they need to get user generated content, what advice would you give to them, or maybe one action step that you would give to them as far as how to get that ball rolling?
I mean, first, we talk about it all the time, how important an audience is. And you don't have to build the audience. Our audience is one that we partnered with. And I mean, to be honest, just being active in some of these Facebook groups could create that in and of itself. But I mean, like I said, it really started to take come a whole lot faster once we started incentivizing it. We do a part of our giveaway that we do is a gift card for people that tag us on Instagram, and tag us and follow us. So that's the insert card that we're currently running on our products, and it works. I mean, you're asking them to do something that if they're happy with the product, which we always make good products anyways, it's something that they're happy to do. And it's content that we have so much content because we started offering it as, something to do. And then also on the back end, now we have, when people tag us, we have an SOP to kind of start getting their contact info the best that we can. So yeah, I mean, if nothing else, if you don't have an audience, if you're working on building it, even just using an insert card to incentivize that, which then you can kind of reverse engineer into a list, is something that you can do right off the bat.
Very nice. Yeah. I think that's fantastic advice for everybody who's listening, and a great place to wrap for today on user-generated content. I'm sure that this will be just one of many conversations on user-generated content, because it's a pretty important thing when we look at building our brand, and it's only going to get more and more important as we look at how to stand out from all the other competition that there is on Amazon and beyond.